Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of SFR Talk. I'm Lance Calhoun, and I have joining me today Mr. Chris Gross. Chris, how's it going?
Great. How about you?
Doing great. Chris and I work with the institutional teams here at HomeRiver Group with a focus on our multifamily and our build-to-rent portfolios. We will be taking questions throughout our presentation today, so feel free to drop those down into the Q&A as they come to mind. So today we're going to be talking about something that's on the mind of a lot of investors right now. How do I get my units leased up? And no matter if you have one unit, you have thousands of units, if you're invested in spread single family homes, you have apartment communities, or maybe even a build to rent community that you're working on building out right now, we're going to go over some lease up principles and strategies that can work for all investors, no matter the size of the portfolio or the scale that you're currently working with. So where we sit today, there's only a few weeks left in what we always sort of think about is the traditional leasing season. Fortunately, a lot of markets aren't as seasonal as they used to be, and we are still seeing leasing throughout the entire year. However, it is the time to get things in the bank if you can and get as many things signed up, as is possible. Right now, we're encouraging all of our owners to really focus on defending and maintaining occupancy. And of course, that's really applicable with your renewals, right? But it's also even more vital if you've got vacant units that you need to get leased up. It's like stocking the pantry before winter time to make sure you have really good occupancy and a really smooth winter going into next year's market. So before we can really get our leases, right? And before we can really start marketing our assets, we need to start first with what we're actually selling. And so our first step, well, we always start with is Chris and I like to learn the product, what it offers. And it doesn't matter again, if it's one home or many, whatever the makeup is, the quality of the asset, both the quality of the unit itself, right? And the location that it's in geographically, but also the amenities there is very key with a ton of competition that we're seeing out there in the market today. The market has shifted recently, and we've been seeing where there are more and more choices for renters and less are softening demand. So we have to provide what we think is the best rental experience possible. And that's sort of going to be a reoccurring theme today. I think Chris will probably hit on that a lot, right? What is the service level, that we're providing? So, Chris, you're out there on a daily basis, seeing what's happening in these markets, in real time. When you think in terms of the actual product that we're pushing to folks that we're selling, right? What are prospective renters looking for? What's sort of the top of their wish list right now?
Yeah, so great question. I think, first and foremost, in the SFR space, a lot of people are coming from the highly amenitized, big multifamily properties. So a couple of things that you can do in SFR, fence in the yard, garage space is a great amenity that's sought after. Any really kind of storage, if there's even an unfinished basement or an attic space, a lot of people are accumulating more and more things as they age and develop, families and homes. So yards that are fenced in, garage. The yards also don't have to be very big. Pets, everybody, I think 72% of renters have pets. So even a small fenced in area for pet friendly is very helpful. Another thing, with the community, if you have a community built to rent, there's a couple in a row. Walkable is great. We always say location, 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 but you can really get creative with your amenities. A walking path, even connecting to a public walking path is a huge thing. A lot of the
Right.
Sun Belt is developing greenways and walking paths, so if you can, spruce that up, connect to that in any way, you can really get creative with some of the amenities that you put in your product.
Yeah, and we see some of those even creating value, right? And solving a problem. I know many of our SFR owners, we have a program in place where, the owner will purchase a privacy fence and the resident will pay a little extra every month and the property's improved. We made more money. The resident has a place to keep the dog and it's great. So yeah, pets are a major driver, right? How pet
Yep.
friendly you are and what pet amenities you have. That's the other family member, that's out there. So Chris, I know another area that we see a big demand for in amenities and also very relevant to operations is a lot of the tech amenities that are out there, especially our bulk internet and a lot of the self show and smart home tech, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of the renters nowadays are a younger generation. They're very tech savvy. Even the older folks are very tech savvy nowadays too. So, include the internet. A lot of times, and it's a great sales pitch as well. You get a bulk deal, they can save money on internet, so it's adding that value, but it's also providing them, one quick phone number. They call, it's set up, they're good to go day one. They have a big, conference call. They have something like this going on, their internet is ready to go as they move in. It also helps really with the leasing process. There's a very much an on-demand style to just the culture nowadays, the gig economy and everything like that. So people want to see it on their own schedule. They don't want to have to set up an appointment in the future if they're driving by. They have, get an afternoon off of work. Like they want to see it and they want to tour that unit when it's convenient for them, not when it's convenient for, a leasing agent or a realtor to accompany them.
Yeah, and convenience is key, right? And when you talk about what service level you're trying to provide, and that's in a lot of ways just as vital, in some cases more vital than the actual physical asset when they can get the identical house, around the corner, the same apartment across the street, right? That really is the differentiator. And that sort of is part of the reason why we've invested right into, 24-hour call centers, always live folks out there. Chris, we've had a lot of fun setting up AI chatbots that are able to get information to people in a very low touch way, but very good, solid, valuable information. People are much more comfortable to interact with that than anything else, and you're right, even to us older folks, please text me, don't call, right? That's how we would much rather operate. And I think that extends, to everybody.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. And then one other thing to add is it's actually a value add after the leasing process as well. So it really very much helps with that. But having something on your phone where you can control the thermostat, you can let a delivery driver in or a repairman in, stuff like that is huge. And then obviously it's all synced through the internet as well. So not only does it help with the leasing process and creates that on-demand service, it's a value add for them once they do end up leasing.
Yeah, and I think Chris, some of our assets they have, resort style amenities, right? And some amazing assets there, on the property for people to do, and a lot of our homes do not, right? And maybe there's a community pool, maybe there's some other things. So when you don't have any of those amenities, and even when you do, that convenience factor and service level can very often be the difference between you getting the lease and someone else getting it, because anyone can make their home or their unit, nicer than what you have. Pricing all obviously comes into it, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But it's very important that can be a difference and can be the only difference, right? How well the calls come in are responded to, how well you treat people, how responsive you are. And you're right, Chris. It's the age of our the largest generation in the market right now is the millennial generation. Always been able to Google anything and everything, all the information, immediate gratification right there available. It's amazing. They expect that, and so do we in all of their business dealings. So
Yeah, the
um,
days of voicemail and hey, call me back in 2 hours when you're done is just no longer exists. So if you're not answering that first call, they're going to go, especially with all the inventory on the market right now, they're going to go to the next person that answers the phone in real time.
yeah, that's right. The swiftest to it always gets it done. So now, caveat, all of those things are true with all things being equal, meaning the next thing we have to make sure is that we have that product that we've just determined and banged out all the things that make it valuable. We have to have that value correctly assigned to price, right? So pricing is absolutely key. It's a major driver. At the end of the day, it comes down to that more than anything else, truly, is what the price is, right? It has a major impact. And that has changed a lot, especially over the past 5 years, have been, somewhat of a roller coaster. We saw a lot of pent-up demand post-COVID, and we also saw the lack of units, a massive amount of building that happened, and all those units sort of landed at the same time. And so what we've seen for the past few quarters, this massive number of new units that have been delivered, and it's both apartments, single family homes, townhouses, all segments have seen a lot of this growth, right? And then we've also had some slower demand, right? A lot of people are staying in their current rental. They're staying in their current home also and not selling, right? For all kinds of different reasons. So you have this hesitation on the consumer side and then absorbing all these units that have been built. And so what we've seen is some softening in rent growth. And we're starting to see, especially on the single family side, everything go back to sort of pre-COVID levels, sort of what all the experts in the market are calling normalization, right? So we're getting back to, back to what is normal. But we have seen some markets, take some big hits. A good example of that is, Florida. We've seen some submarkets in Florida where rents have been very soft, right? Where Chris, you know from direct experience, where we've had to get very creative and make some adjustments, as that market is constantly changing. You've seen even some in Texas, right? And Austin, Texas is a good example. Chris, I think you just completed a lease up, not too far outside of that market, and we had to do some aggressive, pricing to get it in line. I think when we underwrote it, it was high 2000s in the rent, like maybe 2800, and then you had to start making some cuts, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and that's a big piece right now in today's market is you have to be very responsive with your pricing. I think that deal was somewhere around 2,800 when we underwrote it. Once it was finally built, I want to say we were already down in the 2,200. For the first release. Obviously, always get some early adopters. So we closed a few leases there, but really that was probably about 9 months ago. We've even seen some deterioration in pricing in that market because it is one of the probably the most overbuilt where we had to go, we had to monitor throughout the first 3 to 6 months of the lease up as well to really lock in that pricing and make sure, you know, we were fighting for occupancy when we needed to. And now things pick up as they're anticipated to next year. We have that base, and we can start talking about rent growth and getting back to it. But riding 25% vacancy through the end of this Q3 Q4 this year really would have put the property behind.
Yeah, and now that you're stable, you're starting to shift rent the other way, right? I know you had positive rent growth on your first batch of renewals, and you and I looked at a schedule based off some of the forecasts, right? That got us to get leased up. You've seen some of that, projecting that we're gonna, really raise rents there, right? And I think that's the right way to handle it. The good news is what everyone is predicting is going to happen in the market because there's not a lot of new deliveries coming up, not a lot of new construction starts, which, if you're sitting on the sidelines, when do I start building? That quite potentially could be a good time to do that because there's not a lot of other folks, getting their homes out there. We're expecting, Q3 and Q4 to look a little better. We're also expecting Q1 and Q2 next year, especially on the multifamily side, to look better as those deliveries have slowed down. And we're seeing some of that in real time, right? In this one particular asset, we went down. Now we're starting to come back up. We're seeing that in some other markets, and some other stabilized lease ups and ones in lease up as well. So, that's the good news. That's where we're heading. That's where we're going. So, Chris, you're seeing concessions go up, rents getting flat or falling, right? And, what's your biggest recommendation that you're giving to owners right now?
Yeah, I think the biggest recommendation is because things are a lot more competitive than they have been, honestly, probably for the last decade, is don't be the last one. Don't be proud of your product, overly proud, I should say. Always be proud of your product. Don't be overly proud where you think you deserve this lofty premium. It is a competitive market right now. So you don't want to be the last person in the neighborhood offering that concession. I mean, if you're not offering concessions and your price the same and somebody's offering a month or now 2 months, is pretty popular. You're just not gonna. There's not much of a differentiator to close somebody when they're really being thrown a lot of concessions right now. So I would say just be dynamic, act quickly. And that's on, right now when things are tight, but also you can be dynamic and act quickly as things improve and even start to
Right.
increase that if that's what the market is doing or the sub market.
Yeah, that's absolutely it, right? You got to be able to respond very quickly, and one of the things I love about being in Home River Group is we've got so much data, right? We got a lot of big data. We've got what I call a little data, right? And by big data, we have a lot of national reporting, right? A lot of national public data that's out there where we can see a lot of trends. And then partially because of our scale and our size, right? We're in so many different markets. I think it's 60 plus markets in 30 plus states, and we have boots on the ground, right? So we have, people in those markets that are experts. We see a lot of data. And Chris, I know we use a lot of that, right? And so, what are you finding most valuable? Which of the data are you using the most to actually get us to our pricing goals?
Yeah, so there's the macro data. Hey, how's the real estate market doing nationally? There's state level data, but really, I think what we find to be the most helpful is like very sub-market, very close to your product. A lot of, to use Tampa or Austin for example, people generally aren't searching anymore rental houses in Tampa. They're looking rental houses in Midtown Tampa, rental houses in North Tampa, rental houses in St. Petersburg, downtown, right? They want that. So you could be priced accordingly to somebody 20 miles away, but really your neighborhood, your specific location is your biggest competition right now. So you want to make sure you're paying attention really to that. There's somebody across the street, you got to know what they're doing daily, basically.
Yeah, it's as always, real estate is hyper local, right?
Hmm.
And that's what it really comes down to. And so, our knowledge in these markets really helps us get good recommendations to these owners of this is where we should price, this is what the mix should be. And it's always very rewarding to look at some of the data as it comes in on a national level and go, yep, no, we're right. We're right where we expect it to be. We're actually doing like, a little better. So that's always really, really helpful. So I think though, Chris, as you're talking about hyper local and seeing a lot of that, that's a really good segue into actually promoting, the lease up, right? The marketing and advertising piece of that. We got a great product. We got a price where it should be. We're staying on top of it so we can be dynamic with the market. But now we've got to get the word out there, right? So, Chris, when we do that, what's really the first step we take, right, to get our inventory marketed?
Yeah, I think right now, back to the self-showing and people don't want to talk to, they don't want inbound calls as much. They don't want to be sold or coached on what to do. They want to find out their own answer. So, yeah, first and foremost, you have to have a great digital presence. You have to have good, branding. Professional photos are a must now. I mean, we're now doing, drones and if it's a build to rent renderings as early in the process as possible. So, really trying to make sure you put your best foot forward because you think about all the apps online, Instagram, people don't even hover on the same thing for 3 seconds. So if your thumbnail isn't good, if your photos aren't good, they're already on to the next one. So you have to have a really strong digital presence.
Yeah, it's you're competing with TikTok in a lot of ways, right? And that is a marketing pipeline that we do use. We do a lot of social media, but that's it. And you're right, just simply even having good photos really is not quite enough anymore, right? But that's definitely a bare minimum, and Chris, we generate 360 tours and some of the drone stuff is just, it's beautiful. It's very exciting to see. So I think the other thing we've seen a lot of with us having more homes on the market, right? You're seeing your traditional ILSs, your internet listing services, right? You're seeing more and more inventory on there, and it's getting harder and harder to stand out, right? And you're sort of caught, in the pile with so many other competing homes. But Chris, we've found some things that are really making a difference, right? That's really sealing that sort of breach there, right?
Yeah, so really at the end of the day, the goal is to get the person that you're trying to lease to your website, to your application process. So if you have a huge budget, you got 350 multifamily units, you're going to be on a platinum, a co-star package, you're going to be on a, platinum equivalent Zillow package, you're going to spend all that money. But really, it's competitive. Everybody's on those packages now. So how can you be, how can you be more creative? And what we found a lot of success with is very targeted Google ads and then also pairing with that Google Analytics. We look a lot at who's searching for what, when are they searching, how are they searching. If they get to the website, do they click off? Do they close it when, they see the price? Do they look at the floor plan and they close it? Do they get all the way to the application and then for some reason that's when their session falls off? And well, maybe there's something with your application. So it's very important and really to monitor that. And again, if you're in a competitive market in a lease up, monitoring it almost daily, if not weekly.
Yes. Yeah, it has really become a game changer for us in so ways of having, the Google ads and from both the, the effectiveness, but also from the analytics that increases the overall effectiveness of how we're able to actually market. And so, if you're not as familiar with this type of product, you probably are and don't quite realize it. So, right now, if I wanted to ask Chris, you're in Charlotte, North Carolina. If I wanted to ask you what's the best, sushi place in Ballantyne, which is a nice area in Charlotte, you could take out your phone. Chris probably knows what the best place is, but if he didn't, he could take out his phone and he would Google it, right? And if I decided I want to get a new monitor for my computer, I'll do the same thing. I'll pull it out and I'll search it on Google. Well,
Mhm.
guess what? That's how everybody searches for everything, including when they go to make a rental decision for a home. There's studies that have been done that show over 70% of home searches start in Google. They actually open up their cell phone, just like we do for everything else, and type homes for rent near me, pet friendly apartments in this area, homes with a pool in this neighborhood, right? Four bedrooms in this school district. All those type of things is where the search actually starts. And so by using those targeted ads, we're able to get in front of them and drive the traffic to all of our digital sources before they went to the internet listing services and scrolled through the 400 different competing, units that are going up against you. So we find that we get a much higher click rate and we actually get a much higher production on those ads than anywhere else. And so it's a key component of all the marketing for our community-based homes, but it's something we're also using across all of our marketing at Home River Group, and we're getting some amazing results out of this. The reason it's important is those analytics, as Chris mentioned. We're actually able to see who is looking at what and when they're looking at it, and make sure we're targeting those times. And so it gives us a much higher closing rate per dollar than we would have otherwise. Because ultimately, you only want the folks looking at your advertisements that are looking to make a housing decision, right? If they're looking for something on the other side of town and they don't want to live where your asset is, then that's fine. We don't necessarily care if they see that ad or not, right? So it is a great way to generate traffic to all of those ad sources. And Chris, I think we've seen it become so effectively. It's either like what first or second for every property now at this point for all of our
Yeah,
community-based
I
properties.
think except for one, it's the number one. And with that, the Zillows and the ILS services are good. You want to be on them as well. But the thing we do is we also track. Leads are great, but leases are better. So what's actually driving not only the leads, but what is closing out your leases. And so you can track them against each other. You can add spend here. You can take away spend there. I mean, the biggest thing I've noticed is the townhouse product just Zillow is better. But if you're true multifamily, some of the CoStar stuff is better. But the good thing with some of the Google and some of the analytics is you can really target and you can actually we have a very high end lease up. And we've had Google take the bottom 50 percentile of income earners that won't even qualify out of the search results. So we're not spending for them to see it to get in front of their eyes, which is great. But we know when a lead comes in, they're almost pre-qualifying themselves. So Google's a little interesting with what they'll actually allow you to do. It's very much in tranches. You can't just take out, so they let you go 50% one way or the other. But there's little things you can do like that. And then the biggest thing again is just track it, see what's working, and don't be afraid to throw more money at what's working and take a little bit away from what's not.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And we love the product too because you get a little occupancy problem. Well, let's crank up the
Mhm.
pay-per-click ads, right? And we suddenly see that breach get quickly filled, and then we are able to cut it right back off. And so it's really effective, especially in lease up, to generate a lot of traffic from the beginning because that's what you have to do. It's a new asset, right? Even if it's a single family home, that's been 5 years old but it's been owner occupied and now it's suddenly a rental, you still have to build traffic for that. It's not already established.
Mhm.
And Chris, that data is really informative to how we look at the conversion points in the pipeline. And it's really a math exercise, right? And that's how we look at the leads that come in. And as Chris said, leads are great but leases are what we're shooting for. How do we actually get that funnel to funnel down to an actual lease? because we know, generally speaking, if I want to get one lease, we're going to need to show that unit 3 or 4 times. And if we want to show that unit 3 or 4 times, because a lot of people cancel and no show, we're probably going to need to get, 8 to 10 appointments set up. And to get 8 or 10 appointments set up, we're probably going to need to talk to, 100 people, right? And to talk to 100 people, we're probably going to need 500 people to talk to that either send us a lead or come through one of the many marketing channels that we have. And we're able to use all that data to see what did they do on the website, what turned them down, was it price, what were they looking at, and then where the breakdown in those conversion points are. So it lets us be very analytical and really make smart decisions and give good recommendations, to everybody. So,
It's great
okay.
also for troubleshooting. If the top of the funnel's great, but you're just not getting the showings, well, where are they clicking off on the website? Do they get to the self-show module and there's a glitch there, and that's why all of a sudden your 50 leads have not signed up for any tours, or are they all touring, but for some reason the application? So it allows you to look into some of the user experience stuff on your website and see where really is the breakdown happening, because we got the 50 leads, so therefore we got the 5 showings, therefore we got the one lease. But if that's not flowing like it should, it allows you to drill in really to the problem points of that sales funnel, and see what's not working. Is it the third photo is ugly and everybody's clicking off of that? Maybe we swap that one out, we put a different one. It really allows you to look and see where things are breaking down throughout that process.
Yeah, and it's a much different market, right? If this was 3 or 4 years ago, the home would have an application before we could even get, a sign, put in the yard, right? And now it's changed a lot. So, really the biggest advice for a lease up is, the reoccurring themes I think you guys heard today are, be very nimble, right? You got to respond. You got to be really smart with your data and make really smart decisions to eliminate your vacancy loss and really get to that occupancy as quickly as possible. Because right now, rents are very uncertain, but there is good news coming down the road. And we're going to see, much better market, as we go forward, is what we're thinking. So, and to achieve that, it's really important to look at your service level, not just what does the unit look like on the inside, the outside, but where it's located, all the amenities that are there, and then the interaction that you have with those individuals. We're doing a lot of creative things on marketing, and that's always great. I don't think you can just rely on traditional ads, even though they're absolutely vital, but you've got to do a lot of other marketing things, including some new technology that's out there, right? Making it easy for folks to be able to self-show and see the homes, but being really responsive, really keying on communication. All those things are really valuable. And there's a lot of other interesting things that we're doing out there to help owners, doing a lot of interesting things with different staffing plans, with all kinds of different other revenue generating items that our owners find really valuable. So it looks like we got a couple of questions that have come in, and we'll just start off with those. So first question, very great question. How big does a client or an investment have to be for you guys to manage? That is my absolutely favorite thing about Home River Group, because the answer is one. You can have just one home with us. We will manage any markets that we're currently in, and there are new markets that we either greenfield or are planning expansion into that we can be as well. So if you have a rental asset in the United States, please reach out to us. We would be more than happy, to manage and work with you to help you grow your portfolio. But yes, our smallest clients have one home. And we have clients that have literally thousands of assets as well, and we are designed to service all of them. So yes, one home is perfectly great. Second question, what risk do property management companies face when approving and marketing homes in poor condition? Any tips to prevent this? So that's a really great question. I think it's always, a risk anytime you go to deploy capital in any of your assets, right? And condition is one of those things that you do have to look at very closely, because it is also possible to over improve, your home, right? I've got an old half rusted out F-150, and I could probably do all kinds of stuff to it, right? But it's still going to be an old rusted out F-150, right? No matter how much I jazz it up, no matter how cool the paint job is, right? So I think you can over improve, But if you're marketing a home in a poor condition, and that can mean a lot of things, I think you are running a major risk. We don't like homes to be shown, and it's our sort of standard policy until they are 100% rent ready. Because if they walk in the door and they make a we make a bad impression because something's not ready, something's not clean, something's damaged, then they're absolutely going to start deducting from whatever the value they thought the rental was when they walked in the door, which happens to be the amount of rent you told them it would take. So if you tell them it's a 2000 a month house, they walk in the door and it looks bad, they're going, mm-mm, this is maybe 1900, right? And it's only going to go downhill from there. A lot of renters also look at it as this is how the home looks when it's for rent. What's it going to be like dealing with this property, once I've actually moved in here, right? And it's you only get one chance to make a first impression. I think we've all heard that. It's very applicable in this case as well. Now, when you talk about poor condition and you're talking about habitability issues, right? So there's aesthetics, that wall needs a paint job, right? And wow, that wall could collapse. Those are two completely different things, right? And so you want to be very careful as to not open yourself up, to massive liability issues. You want everything to be clean, safe, and functional as your bare minimum standard. That's number one, first and foremost. Clean's very easy. Even my old wore out F-150, it's clean, right? Safe, functional, right? Cranks, seatbelts work, headlights work, horn works, past state inspection. It ain't beautiful, but it works, right? There's nothing wrong with doing it that way. However, you may take a loss on your time, how long it takes to get it rented, all of those things. It may be smarter to invest a little more and get it, a little sooner. I would encourage you reach out. We can put you with, someone from either our business development team or one of our property managers, and they can happily take a look at this address and give you a recommendation, what we think sort of is the industry standard, what we're seeing with competition, what we think the price would be without doing a lot of work to it, and what the price would be with doing some work to it. And both of those are valid approaches, right? Both of them work just well. I probably could go buy me a new F-150, but the old wore out one works just fine for what I need, right? So okay. Next question. Um, what is being rented more, single families or apartments? Yeah, great question. So, there are way more apartment units than there are single family rentals. And it's something to sort of keep in mind, because you see a lot of stuff in the news about, corporate landlords. And it's important to remember single family rentals are a teeny tiny percentage of all the homes that are in the United States and are a fraction of the multifamily units, that have been built. As far as what you're seeing on demand, some of the generational stuff that Chris was talking about earlier, is really a contributing factor to that. The millennials are the biggest generation right now, right? And you look at sort of the age that they are and what you're seeing with, peak time for career transitions, so potentially moving, family growth, they're in the peak season for all of those things. And because less of them are homeowners, if you're a baby boomer, for example, you're probably sitting on some equity in your home and you're waiting for the right time to sell it to cash that out, right? That would not be the case with the younger, rentals, renters, excuse me. So we're seeing a lot of demand across the board. There's not enough housing. Again, if you're sitting on the sidelines waiting to build, let's get those hammers swinging, right? But I do think there is demand depending on what market you're in and where you're at. HomeRiver Group, as the leading renter, landlord, property manager for single family homes in the U.S., we're very bullish on those single family homes, and also the build to rent, which sort of is a little bit of both, right?
Mhm.
Um, do we do international? Not at this time. I don't believe we're doing anything outside of the contiguous 48 at this time. But Chris, I mean, I would love for us to open up like an Australia branch or a French Riviera branch, something like that. That I could get behind that, right?
Yeah, I'm totally on board with that.
We do hope that we would be able to do that. I think any company would love to be an international corporation. So that might be very cool one day. If you are looking referrals in any of those markets, do let us know. No promises that we know someone in those markets, but Chris and I do have several international clients, especially north of the U.S. border up in Canada. So yeah, if you're looking for recommendations, we there's a chance we might know somebody. So okay, great question on Section 8. How is HomeRiver currently handling lease renewal and rent increase issues with HAP? Yeah, HAP is it's sort of a little bit all over the place, right? So and Jonathan, I see you posted this question. We'll have somebody reach out and talk to you directly on what we're seeing, like on a submarket level, and some of the things that you've asked. But what we're seeing across the board is a lot of confusion on the Section 8 side, right? And what we sort of had happen is the previous administration, really was pushing and advocating and spending some money on increasing a lot of money going into those programs. And we saw a lot of housing authorities that were going to raise some of their voucher amounts to sort of go along with some of the big rent growth we have seen post-COVID, right? And a lot of those units are sort of underpriced. A lot of those vouchers are not realistic for what it really costs to go out and find a house, in that market. And we had an administration change, and it looks like there's a potential, or at least a fear of some things shifting in the other direction. There may not be as much money there. And so it's just a lot of confusion right now. And we're seeing different housing authorities across the whole country react in different ways, look at their pool of funds and how to best administrate those in different ways. And we're working with them on an individual basis. And Chris, I know you've had conversations with some of the large ones, directly. And we really value our partnership with those. We're certainly not the largest, Section 8 landlord in the country, but it is a big piece of our portfolio and in several of our markets. We have a lot of those assets. And another great thing about Home River Group is we have great policies and documented procedures, for all of these things. So we really have our stuff together very well when it comes to the whole entire Section 8 and affordable and tax credit processes. So I do think we'll start to see some normalcy come back to that as well once everyone sort of gets the lay of the land and see how things are going. Our hope is, that they will do some increases on the voucher amounts, because I know a lot of our owners, they are behind on rent. They should be getting some renewal increases and getting some relief on that. So that's our hope, for sure. Um, let's see here. How fast do you have to take care of maintenance issues? Yeah, that's a great question. So and so I see here you put sort of two parts. So, time is of the essence on maintenance things, especially if it's a habitability issue, right? And if it's a life safety type of issue, it's something you want to deal with, as quickly as possible. And there may be, legal ramifications if someone's injured. It's right now we're all in the middle of a heat wave, right? And some of our markets, it's getting close to 100 degrees, and it could be injurious for someone, right? So you want to be smart. You want to avoid any liability. You don't want to have to deal, with that whole situation. That being said, one of the recurring themes Chris and I were talking about today, right, is the customer service level, right? What is the service level that we're providing? And it's a funny question that you ask, because Chris, what temperature was it in your house here about 2 hours ago?
Yeah, my AC actually went out last night, so it was 85 a little while ago. Luckily, somebody came this morning, and I'm probably down to 79, hopefully by now. But
Uh, I,
another piece that I think to add, is what we talked about earlier is communication. It's not always about how fast you fix it. It's about how fast you respond that you're going to fix it. So that 24-hour call center, like if when my and I had to wait till 8 o'clock till they opened up, and I woke up before that, and I was, calling them at 7:30. They didn't answer, but if somebody answered then and just said, "Hey, we're going to come at the same time," but they answered 30 minutes earlier, it would have been a better experience. But because they weren't open until 8, I got the on-call tech who said you got to call back after 8. So really, I mean, a heat wave is a little different. I was a little annoyed, obviously, but if you fix it in 2 to 3 days, that's pretty much kind of the standard for normal stuff that you have to dispatch in SFR, because there is some logistics involved. But if you answer that phone and you tell them every step of the way, and if you have to order a part, if they find out when they call versus when you call them and say, hey, we had to order a part, the conversation and the resident satisfaction is completely different, just that communication piece.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And then the second part of that question was asking about, the worth of outsourcing some of these tasks, customer service and maintenance requests, offshore. And that is a very loaded question, and we see a lot of industries, including ours, do that as well. Home River Group does not manage internationally, but we do have employees that are international that do not just live in this country. I think the biggest differentiator that you would see here is like you would with any person that you employ. Are they experienced and are they knowledgeable in the industry? And is this something that they do on a day-to-day basis, right? I played Little League baseball, but I probably couldn't just go pick up a bat right now and hit and get a hit, right? So it's something you have to do every single day. You have to be experienced with it, and you have to have some knowledge with it. And so, however you would get those third-party employees, right? Because that's what we're talking about. It's going to depend on if they specialize in that. And there's companies that do that. There's some very really good companies that do that. If you want to reach out, to Chris or I directly, we're happy to make some recommendations. But there's companies that have temporary and remote property management professionals that are out there, right? There's also other companies that just give you, a virtual assistant, and I could see a different experience. My personal preference would be that they do it every day. They have knowledge, they have experience, to do it. I think that would get you, the best result. So. Chris, I'll let you take this one. What are some of the concessions you see being the most effective? 3 months rent, or you think it's better to just lower the asking rent?
So that's a great question. We've both could be effective. I think right now, and we're into the 2 months of concessions because it's been so competitive in some of our markets. But really, concessions allow you to have that, if you're in a lease up specifically, you get the occupancy. You may not see that rent, but when you're in a better position next year, you have a higher base to then increase off of. So I would probably, if all else being equal, I would probably go to concessions first. Now, if you throw concessions at an overpriced product, still may not have success there. So it is a little bit of a give and take, and you have to kind of find the perfect zone. But I always like to protect the top line and make sure you're getting the highest rent, whether and lean more towards concessions, just because again, everything we've seen next year should start to pick up. So it's much better to get 3 to 4% rent growth on a $2,000 a month apartment than it is on 1,800, especially at scale.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's you got to be smart about it, right? And it's hyper local, and just like you were talking about, Chris, what are my comps doing, and where do I see my own traffic leading me to think I need to do so I can lead against that, right? So
Yeah, and
that's
then the
very
other thing is how are you selling the value add? Are you letting everybody know you're going to save $50 on your bulk internet because you don't have to pay, Spectrum, whatever it is now, $150. We're going to give it to you for, 40, 50. And then that's also another way to get people in the door, and then, some rev share opportunities long term where you can start to take that up as well alongside the rent as things improve. But so concessions isn't just a one size, there's other things you want to put your best foot forward as well, and advertise some of the value that you're showing elsewhere too on the property.
yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Let's see here. What is the best strategy if a tenant fails to pay rent without having to go through filing? Also a really, really great question. So uh, I will answer the question, but our recommendation is always to take whatever legal steps are available to you at the earliest available date, so that you don't lose any time and you're able to negotiate, from a position of strength. We think that's the most effective strategy, and especially in some markets where court times can take months. Waiting a little while sometimes can cause you bigger problems, down the road. That being said, overall, the number one way to get your collections is to have conversations with your residents, to talk to them, to communicate with them, to work with them. You're not calling them to, hey, where's my money, to anything at all. It's like, hey, Mr. Resident, we have a problem. The rent's not get paid, and we're going to work together to get this paid for both of our benefits. Because that's truly what it is, right? We don't want to have to evict anybody. It's awful. We never want to have to do that. We want everyone to pay, everyone to be happy, everyone to enjoy their home. So communication is the key thing, right? And determining if this is a sort of a one-time thing, because stuff happens, right? People get sick, people have, cars break down, all kinds of stuff happens, right? Communicating with them, figuring that out, or is it something has happened where this person cannot afford this unit? Hopefully, you screened them up front, you made sure everything was fine. But again, things can change, right? People, can lose their employment, all these things can happen. So talking to them, communicating to them, finding out what went wrong, and if possible, getting them on a path to getting caught up can be very helpful. There is still ways to get assistance rental money for people. It's not like the COVID money, right? That from the CARES Act and some of those things that we had, originally. But there are still so many wonderful private organizations out there that will let them do that. There also are some great products, and Chris, I know you use one. I think on almost all of the multifamily build to rent communities, where if the resident knows they're not going to be able to pay rent on the first, they're able to go to this company and they'll pay the rent for them, and they'll make payments for that month's rent. The owner gets paid 100% of their money up front on time, and then the company make sure they collect. It's just like when you check out at Amazon and it's got that little option at the bottom to like split your payments. There's like Klarna and Affirm. There's like three or four different ones. So it's the same thing for rent. And so we use that on a lot of our community-based projects. It's a really effective way to do that. There are cases where you can make payment plans, with a resident. But, Chris, I know you're pretty passionate about this. It's only if it's like, hey, they got off track because, they got a flat tire and they got to get that fixed versus, they can't really afford it, right?
Yeah, and a lot of our payment plans I would suggest to probably do in court so that you don't have to restart anything.
Yes.
But another piece I think to it that's very important is educating the resident. A lot of them have not been through an eviction process, so the more caught off guard they are, the worse it can be, right? I mean, obviously expenses start to incur when you start getting attorneys involved. So, if you coach them and say, hey, next Friday we are going to have to send this to the attorney, that it's going to be an additional $400 filing fee. Well, that, educates them so they're not surprised if it does happen, but also creates urgency that, hey, we should be the first ones you pay because it's only going to go up from here. So really get back to the communication and calling them. It's educating them on, okay, I understand you don't physically have the money. Here's what to expect next, and please call me as soon as you do because it will continue to incur. So it's a little bit of an education piece because not everybody's has gone through eviction. Most people haven't. So if they do, something does happen where they find themselves in that predicament, it's always good to educate them on it.
Yeah, and it's important to talk to people and be compassionate because stuff happens, right? That's just how life is, and it can be a very, it's something no one ever wants to have to face, right? So it's an uncomfortable situation, for everyone, and the more knowledge, the better off. So again, our recommendation is just like Chris said again there, go ahead and go through the court process and the legal process as soon as you can. And if you're going to do a payment plan with someone, that's the way to do it. Get the judge's stamp on it, right? But try to get them assistance if you can. Try to work with them to get it done. Nobody ever wants anyone to be evicted. It only costs money, and there's no reason to cost that money, if we can avoid it. So.
Mhm.
Thank you. Very kind note from Kansas. Yeah, we will give contact information at the end of this. So you're welcome to reach out to myself and Chris at any point. We'll be able to help you in any way we can and get you with the right person, there for sure. And same thing to, I believe, Mr. Preston, and Memphis, same thing. Shoot your contact info over to me if you don't mind, sir, and we will be able to help you with that very, very quickly.
Mhm.
Um, what can third-party maintenance providers do to go above and beyond, in your opinion, to serve your portfolio and your residents? Oh, that's a fantastic question. I really appreciate that. Um, Chris, I'm sure you have some thoughts on this, but we look at third-party maintenance providers, our vendor partners, right? We look at them as our partners in this, right? And they're very important to our business. And the same extends, to everyone that we work with to provide the services that we do. It's really important. It would be like, McDonald's not having a good relationship with who bakes their buns, right? You're not going to sell a lot of burgers if you don't have the bun at McDonald's, right? So it's very important to do that. The vendors and the third party suppliers of all types that, personally, we find the thing that's the most above and beyond is to mirror their service level when you interact with the residents, right? We want everyone to give that great service level, the smile, the friendliness, the communicating, as Chris indicated earlier, exceeding those expectations. That's the practical thing, and then the tangible sort of physical kind of thing is software, and if the softwares talk to each other. So integration with, the property management tech that our people use is very important. Chris, I know your techs out in the field, they can pull out their cell phone, pull out the app, schedule everything, right? So, Chris, I'd love to hear if you have any different thoughts, but that's really, the thing I think to go above and beyond is mirror our service level, make us look good, right? Make us all look good on
Mhm.
this thing. Make everybody happy. We just want our residents to be happy, and then make it easy on our folks so that our softwares, can talk back and forth.
Yeah, that always makes it much more efficient. And do what you say you're going to do. If you tell a resident you're going to be there tomorrow, don't not show up and then call them. Call them if something happens. Things do happen. Again, be proactive. Hey, we missed it, and also communicate with us. And then lastly, which is just kind of a pet peeve of mine, make sure you talk to your techs at your company. Do not try to upsell or tell the resident everything that they think is wrong with the property. Sometimes techs can go in and they mean the best, but they'll, oh, this HVAC is a little bit outdated. It's 8 years old. Well, it's working fine. They're not the homeowner. You don't have to try to get a little bit extra money. Realize who the client is sometimes, because that is a big satisfaction thing where they call and say, I need a new HVAC. Well, 70 degrees in your house, ma'am. You actually don't, but I know we'll be planning for that in some of our preventative maintenance stuff for the asset. But just because a tech says that, and so sometimes that can be a problem with them. So I would always just coach your techs on the same level of customer service that you would provide if you were in the home.
Yeah, it's really good point, Chris. Thank you so much. Question from Nick: do we manage in Northwest Indiana? Yes, sir. We absolutely do. Indiana is one of our largest markets, and one of the locations of our founding of Home River Group, actually, from that market. So, Chris and I both work for Doug Dale's one of our co-founders, and he is out of the Indianapolis area. So, yeah, very heavy in Indy and a lot of knowledge in that market. Do reach out, and we'd love to talk to you and see how we can help you out there, Nick. And then, yes, Mr. Huff, we are absolutely recording this. Scott, if I lie, chime in here, but I believe you'll have this posted on YouTube and LinkedIn and all those fun places, and maybe a link to the recording too. I think so.
Yes, we will email out a link to the recording and it'll be on our YouTube channel.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. We're out there, and if anyone has any additional questions that maybe, didn't come to mind while we're going through this, feel free to shoot Chris or myself an email. We'd love to talk to you. Home River Group, we've got local market experts, throughout the entire country. We get a lot of knowledge. We really know what's going on in these submarkets, and we'd love to, have conversations if there's anything we can do to assist you guys out there. And let's get everybody occupied and ready to go. All right. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy your day.
Have a great day, everybody.